Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. A lot of negativity in college football right now. Hugh Freeze maybe on the verge of being fired, maybe fired by the time you listen to this. Brian Kelly's out. Billy Napier's out. Mario Cristobal laid an egg. Dabo Swinney kind of sort of stinks and is washed up. You know who I want to give a little bit of credit to? Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners, who I thought probably got the signature win of Saturday, going to Tennessee and winning 33-27. Oklahoma getting the big victory in Knoxville, okay? And so I want to break down this game. We're not going to spend like a ton of time on it because there is a lot to discuss across the world of college football. But I think this game is worth noting for a few reasons because Oklahoma could have crapped the bed, could have laid down after last week's loss to Ole Miss. Instead, they get the win. They're now 7-2, kind of sort of lurking, still have some work to do, still have a tough schedule ahead. But if they went out there in the college football playoff, and I think even if they lose, probably at the front of a list of potential 9-3 teams to get in. So let's go ahead and break down this game. First of all, as far as the game is concerned, listen, I know Tennessee fans. I saw a lot of Tennessee anger on social media on Saturday night. I get it. You're at home. The path is right there in front of you of, you have a manageable schedule, all things considered. There are no easy schedules in the SEC, but all things considered, it was pretty manageable. And if you win this game, you're probably going to sneak in as a 10-2 at-large team to the college football playoffs. So it's a night game. It's a blackout. You outgained Oklahoma by over 100 yards. Just this weird, bizarre set of circumstances. And I understand the frustration from Tennessee fans, okay? At the same time, though, I do think we have to give a little bit of credit to Oklahoma. And I thought, to me, this was a secretly very, very, very impressive win for the Sooners, okay? So first of all, we'll talk big picture stuff in a second. But I think what is worth noting here, this was kind of a back against the wall game for Oklahoma, right? And I don't just mean for this season. I kind of mean as a program. Like, you think about it. Last year, Oklahoma goes 6-7. The disaster with Jackson Arnold that I pinned a lot on Brent Venables, not much on Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold was clearly part of the problem last year. But you pivoted this offseason. You spent a ton of money on kind of front office personnel. Jim Nagy, the GM. You spent a ton of money to go get Ben Arbuckle, the OC, and you spend a ton of money to go get John Mateer, his quarterback. And so why it's worth noting is it all looks good on paper in August, right? We're talking about them as a playoff team and one of the most improved teams. We had Phil Steele on the show say he believed Oklahoma was the most improved team in college football. And then all of a sudden the games start. You're looking good for most of the season. You lose to Texas. And then last week you lose to Ole Miss in a game that you led going into the fourth quarter at home. And so all of a sudden it sets up this game in Knoxville where nobody's picking you to win. And like I said, I think if you lose this game, all of a sudden a lot of stuff is on the table. John Mateer's not the guy. Ben Arbuckle's overrated. And I think more importantly, I don't know that a loss in this game puts Brent Venables right back on the hot seat, but a loss in this game has you 6-3 going into a backstretch that includes at Alabama, Missouri, and LSU. And all of a sudden, 7-5 is absolutely in play. And then everything is in play at that point. And so I actually give Oklahoma credit because coming into this game, I actually I like the vibe of Oklahoma, as weird as it sounds. Like John Mateer coming into the week was asked about his struggles, and somebody said to him, how much of your struggles is to do with the hand injury and the thumb and this? He said, none of it. I'm just not playing very well. And I think it would have been easy for everybody in that locker room to kind of quit after the Ole Miss game, and instead the exact opposite happened. And so I want to give them credit because, yes, they won. Yes, it was a weird game, but I thought largely, even though the final score might not reflect it, the game was kind of played on Oklahoma's terms, right? And sometimes we see this in college football, is that, a team wins, a team loses, but who kind of dictates the game? Who kind of forces, like, this is how we are playing the game? Styles make, Kentucky fans will laugh. The styles make fights comment was referenced 100 times during the Kentucky-Auburn game on Saturday night, but it was the same at Tennessee, where that defense took over for Oklahoma. They forced 3 turnovers. They have the defensive touchdown early in the first half. R. Mason Thomas, by the way, I was flipping so many channels. I don't even know if it was a serious injury for R. Mason Thomas. I think it was just a cramp or whatever. But, he returns the ball. They score. And then it's the field goal kicker with the weird setup. The field goal kicker, Tate Sandal, who's kicking all these field goals to win this game. It was the run game. And to me, listen, I didn't think about it until right now. I think you can absolutely argue it was the most impressive win of the Brent Venables era, and I would argue certainly the most important. Like I said, I just mentioned it, back against the wall. You lose this game, there is a lot going on. And so to me, one, I'm just impressed because I've seen a lot of teams quit on their coaches this season, right? I saw LSU lay down and quit when Brian Kelly, when their back was against the wall with Brian Kelly last week. I largely saw Penn State quit on James Franklin. I know players love James. They quit on him, right? They lose that first game to Oregon. They don't get up off the mat. They lose to UCLA. They lose to Northwestern. And they were losing before Drew Aller got hurt. So it wasn't a Drew Aller injury. And we've seen other teams. Clemson quit on Dabo Swinney on Saturday. They've quit on Dabo Swinney all year long. And so to see Oklahoma come into a must-win game and get that win, man, oh man, I just give them a ton of credit in one of the most hostile environments in college football. I saw a bunch of Oklahoma reporters that have never been to Neyland Stadium saying it lived up to the expectations. It was as crazy as expected. And a year after the Heupel Bowl goes in favor of Oklahoma, the reverse happens on Saturday, and it goes in favor of Tennessee, excuse me. The reverse happens on Saturday. Oklahoma gets their revenge on Tennessee. Lastly, I'll say this, as we start looking at the playoff picture, and I'm really somebody, I think the playoff conversation is always interesting, and I understand why all these websites put out brackets every week and this and that. I think it's dumb to kind of speculate on what a bracket could look like in the middle of December, in September or October. But I do think we are starting to get to that time where we have to talk playoff teams, and I think this very much keeps everything alive for Oklahoma. Okay, so if you don't know Oklahoma's schedule, they're 7-2. They have their second bye next week, and they have at Alabama, Missouri, and LSU at home. So Missouri and LSU are both games in Norman, and they're sitting at 7-2 overall. Like I said, if you lose this game, yes, in theory, you could run the table. But if you lose this game, you're 6-3 with 2 ranked teams, 3 tough squads, and you're probably sitting there saying, oh my goodness, like I said, everything is now in play. Well, one, I think you control your own destiny, right? Because if you win out, you're 10-2, you're getting in. At that point, you would have a head-to-head win over Bama. Even if Georgia finishes 11-1, even if Ole Miss finishes 11-1, even if whoever, Texas A&M finishes 12-0, if you're 10-2, if you win, if you beat Alabama, if you beat Tennessee both on the road, you're getting in as an at-large team. But I'll say this, even if they don't beat Alabama in a few weeks, I think when we start talking about 9-3 teams at the front of the line, I think Oklahoma would have to be there, right? A great win over Tennessee. Listen, I see a lot of commentary in the chat about the middle of the Big Ten. Michigan right now is quietly 7-2. And Michigan, by the way, if they were to win out, would be in a conversation to make would be in the playoff mix. Well, Oklahoma has the head-to-head win over them. By the way, imagine if Michigan finishes 10-2 with a win over Ohio State. Oklahoma would have the win. The point I'm trying to make is you start looking at teams that are going to be in the playoff mix, and I think they being Oklahoma, if we get down to 9-3 teams, and remember this year with the college football format the way that it is, never forget that strength of record resume metric is as important as anything. We don't want a situation like last year where Indiana gets in without playing anybody. Well, guess what? Oklahoma has played everybody. They have some very nice wins on the schedule right now. 10-2 would certainly get them in, but I think even 9-3, if you lose, if it's a competitive game at Bama, you got to feel pretty good. Still a lot of work to do. But again, in a season where I've seen a lot of teams quit on a lot of coaches in a lot of circumstances, including Auburn, who we're going to get into in a few minutes from now, you got to give a ton of credit to Oklahoma for going to Neyland and getting the win.